What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. Fireside Giants, powered by BetUS. Today, we want to go ahead and discuss the New York Giants defensive line. Man, are we excited for this unit or what? This front seven looks nasty. Even if you want to peel back a layer, go to past the defensive line, go to the linebacker core. Bobby Okereke leading that unit. But really, man, this defensive line, it's got a crazy trio of pass rushers. We're talking Dexter Lawrence, the best pure nose tackle pass rusher in the NFL. I don't know if you guys saw this stat recently that went viral on social media. Dexter Lawrence has like 81 pressures over the last 2 seasons when lined up at nose tackle. The next closest is 16 pressures. It's just ridiculous what he's been able to accomplish over the past couple years for the Giants on the interior of their defensive line. And now it's not just Dexter Lawrence rushing the passer. He's got some legitimate help. He's got Kayvon Thibodeaux entering his 3rd season, coming off of an 11.5 sack campaign in year 2. And obviously, the big blockbuster acquisition of the offseason, Brian Burns on the opposite edge of Kayvon. This defensive line looks awesome. However, there are some question marks. Who's starting on the interior alongside Dexter Lawrence? What do we think of the pass rushing depth behind Kayvon Thibodeaux and Brian Burns? Can we rely on Azeez Ojulari? We kind of just want to dive into this pass rush, this defensive line, discuss it, maybe even talk about it from a run defending perspective, just dive into that defensive line, preview why we're excited about it, but also why we might have a couple question marks. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend, and why are you so excited like I am about this New York Giants defensive line?
I'm doing pretty good, man. And listen, this Giants defensive line, I feel like the defensive line has been our soul. The pass rush is the soul of this Giants team, winning those Super Bowls, aside from the amazing throws from Eli Manning. It was the pass rush, Justin Tuck and OC and Strahan. Like, you remember these guys that just made such an impact, putting pressure on, whether it be Tom Brady or many different quarterbacks along the way. You can, reflect on Brett Favre or Matt Ryan, like the guys that we had to beat in the postseason to get there, and the pass rush being the pinnacle, like that catalyst for success. The Giants haven't had a pass rush like that in a long, long time. And, they tried to turn the page on that, really turn to a new chapter. And Joe Schoen going out and getting Brian Burns, that's a big step in a direction of having a lot more competency on the defensive front. And we know that Wink Martindale's defense heavily relied on these kind of blitz packages, sending linebackers, sending defensive backs, corners, safeties, and it relied a lot more on deviation and a lot more on kind of confusing the opposing offense than it did just on the front four doing their job at a high level. Of course, Dexter Lawrence was told to go, soak up double teams, rush the passer, do your thing. He was excellent in that regard because his job was pretty clear cut. But when it came to Kayvon Thibodeaux, they were dropping him in coverage. They were doing all sorts of weird things to them, using him as a distraction. And really, he was supposed to be their number 1 outside linebacker. Now he's our number 2. And you could argue that Brian Burns is a lot better than him. So the Giants now have a situation where Brian Burns, who is 26, ascending young player, coming from a team in the Carolina Panthers that is really, really bad. Hopefully they're going to take a step forward in their case. But, for us, we get a player who is coming to New York. He has a personality. He has an aura. Everything about him screams production. And you hear what the players are saying about him. It's all really good stuff. Daniel Jones is saying the talent is there, man. He's scary to go up against. Jermaine Illuminor was like, the guy looks like he's tired and he just kicks your ass the next play. You love to see that from guys like Brian Burns, young, obviously trying to put his best foot forward. Had his first injury last year, like in his career, so he's been really healthy too. I think this is a situation where if you're the Giants, you're trying to get that soul back. You're trying to get that pass rush that you built championship teams out of. And you're talking about Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeaux, and of course, Brian Burns. That trio has the potential to be really special. Top 5 in football if they really reach that potential. So, Anthony, looking at that trio there, looking at Brian Burns, what kind of impact are you expecting from Shane Bowen's defense that really is going to lean on them to be the key pieces, to be the guys that create the pass rush? Not many linebacker blitzes, not many safety or cornerback blitzes. It's going to be a pretty simplistic scheme. At least that's what a lot of the players are saying. It's a lot more simplified. Do you think that that's going to bode well for them, or do you think that there's going to be an adjustment period here?
Sure, there might be a little bit of an adjustment period. However, this is such a talented trio. I think they'll catch on pretty quickly. And I think what you really love about the fact that the Giants have built this trio is the synergy that they're going to create with one another, right? I mean, you're talking about an absolute pocket pusher in Dexter Lawrence. He's soaking up double teams in the middle of the offensive line, and he's pushing the pocket into the lap of the quarterback. When the pocket goes into the lap of the quarterback has to drop back further or slide to one of his sides, left or right. And now the Giants have two really good pass rushers on both of those sides who should be pushing the pocket inward from the opposite end. So it's really just going to create this triangle of suffocating pressure for opposing quarterbacks on many of these reps. Again, I think a lot of it does just stem from the presence of Dexter Lawrence in the middle. He's going to soak up a double team every single play. He will never be one-on-one blocked. Like, that just never happens for Dexter Lawrence because he's such a game changer on the interior. But because he's getting double teamed, how many double teams can you really give to the defensive line if you're the offensive line? You've got 4 down linemen. You can't double everybody from the pass rusher perspective. You're going to have to chip with your tight ends, try and chip on Kayvon and Brian Burns. And honestly, that's going to open things up, Alex, for the secondary. The fact that they don't have to worry about a tight end going and running downfield and getting open on a down-to-down basis because he's going to be chipping the pass rushers. It kind of reminds me of last year how the Giants struggled to get Daniel Bellinger, say, for example, involved in the passing game. They really couldn't because they were going up against a lot of good defensive lines and their offensive line was trash, so they had to just keep their tight end in line and keep him chipping on opposing pass rushers. Now the Giants will be able to kind of give teams a taste of their own medicine from the defensive side of the ball. They're going to be taking a tight end out of the play more often than not. We're probably not getting torched by the TJ Hawkinsons and other elite tight ends of the world this season because they're going to be too busy with their hands full blocking players like Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. So I think that's one kind of those domino effects that maybe you have to peel back an extra layer to really take a look at and pay attention to, and might not just strike you initially once you take a look at this defensive line, but when you really think about the effect that they're going to have on one another and how offenses are going to have to game plan to slow this unit down, they are going to start taking players out of the game, like a tight end, or like the left tackle is now going to have help from a tight end and the left guard because Brian Burns is having such a good game. And that means, okay, one-on-one, Kayvon Thibodeau versus the right tackle. So I just think it's going to be this domino effect, and it's going to cause these players to play in and out of position and play off of one another on the defensive line. And that's why I think this is so special. And we've seen this before, right, Giants fans? Like, we remember 2007 and 2008. We remember 2011, 2012. What made those teams so special? They had so much depth on the defensive line, nobody could be blocked one-on-one. Everybody needed to be double teamed, but obviously that leaves one-on-one opportunities for a JPP, for an OC Umenyiora, for a Justin Tuck, and going back to 07, 08 to a Michael Strahan. So all of those great pass rushers up front, once you have such a stable of them, it's really tough for offensive lines to block them all across the board without suffering severe mismatch and advantages in the matchups, which then cater towards the New York Giants and their strengths. So that's what I'm really thinking with this defensive line. It's going to be a unit that's dynamic. It's going to be a unit that creates synergy. And with Shane Bowen implementing this new defensive scheme, we're not going to be relying on blitzing safeties and cornerbacks and linebackers every single play to generate the pressure. We're also going to be just getting straight one-on-one pass rushing opportunities out of guys like Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't think he's going to be dropping back into coverage 85 times this season. I think he's going to be rushing the passer every single play, getting into the face of the quarterback, which is what we all want to see from Kayvon, which is what we all want to see from Brian Burns. I think those players are going to be at their best when Shane Bowen just lets them get to work and do their thing. And that's what they're going to do this season. And for what it's worth, I think with Kayvon Thibodeau, Alex, there was a lot of chatter last year about how at times he was a little bit of a disappearing act. You know, he finished the season with 11.5 sacks. 3 of those sacks came in one game against a really bad Jets offensive line. We do need to see more consistency from him. And the reason that I feel confident we will is because he's playing with Brian Burns. And he's not playing with Azeez Ojulari and this rotating edge rusher of Jihad Ward, Ojulari, Tom and Fox, and these other guys. Playing with a good pass rusher on the opposite end of you just creates more opportunities for you, which is why I think we will see more consistency from Kayvon Thibodeau. But Alex, talk about why that consistency is key. How Kayvon Thibodeau can take that next step and why, yeah, he started to kind of have his rise last year with that sack total, and he started to look like a much better player, but I really only think he's scratching the surface.
Me too. I mean, listen, you look at, let's say, the inconsistency we've seen over the first two seasons and last year with Kayvon Thibodeau. I think that opposing teams knew if we take out Kayvon, their pass rush is really reliant on sub packages, setting safety setting, and then when you send linebackers, you send safeties from coverage. You're leaving spaces in the secondary open, right? If you're taking guys out of the secondary, there is going to be more space to exercise in the secondary if you're an opposing quarterback. So, of course, you have to actually, if you're Wake Martindale, you need these guys to hit home. And I think that was partially why we created a lot of turnovers. We also gave up a good amount of points. So, it didn't necessarily work great for us because we were giving up a lot of points. The turnovers were awesome, but our offense wasn't good enough to score off of them. So, we were just creating turnovers and giving the ball right back to them and giving up yards and giving up points. So, ultimately, that wasn't a really great equation. What I do think we're going to see with this Giants defense now, probably fewer turnovers, but more three and outs, like more stops, more red zone stops, more efficiency, because you'll have those extra bodies where they need to be instead of pulling them out and having them blitz. So I do think that we're going to see a lot more of a simplistic scheme. And with that said, it's going to be a lot less like big game-changing turnovers, which our offense really didn't capitalize on anyway, and a lot more like third and longs and second and longs and like situations where you actually can make a stop, get a punt, and get the ball back. So I think we'll see a lot more efficiency there. We'll see Kayvon Thibodeau, who's going to be asked, dude, go get after the quarterback. Brian Burns, dude, go get after the quarterback. Dexter Lawrence, do your thing. Raheem Nunez-Roche, soak up double teams, put some pressure. We have some really promising young talent, guys like DJ Davidson, Ryder Anderson, and of course Jordan Riley. Some interesting players there. Like I think that there could be Jordan Riley specifically is one that I think could work his way into the equation alongside Nunez-Roche as someone with some good power, some good strength, some really nice rip moves. He had that rip move against Frank Ragnow during the joint practice that was really nice. He had a couple of big moments in the preseason game. Of course, more time now the next two games to showcase what they can do. But I think this Giants team, like I said earlier, the soul of this team has always been their pass rush. The life of it has always been getting after the quarterback. That's where they've been physical, aggressive, and sneaky, and really just efficient. That is where they're trying to rebuild. They're trying to get back to that point where we have three dominant pass rushers, whether it be JPP and OC and Tucker, whether it be Strahan and all these different pieces that we had in the old days. You had multiple guys that were just constantly producing. Kayvon Thibodeau wants to break Michael Strahan's sack, record. I love it. Go out and do it, man. Brian Burns is going to go up against the best every single week. This is Kayvon Thibodeau to beat up on the weaker options, to beat up on the guys with they're not going to be looking his way. They're not going to check him with a tight end. They're going to be checking Brian Burns with a tight end. Kayvon has to win these 1v1 battles. He could be the difference between winning and losing a lot of these games. And we saw him make impact plays. As a rookie, remember Baltimore had that strip sack against Lamar Jackson to end that game and win it. He can be that key moment, that Mr. Clutch in the fourth quarter, and that's where he needs to shine. That's where Brian Burns needs to shine. Dexter Lawrence has always been that guy, but it's gonna be exciting, man. This defensive line has the potential to be top 5 if they reach that upside, and I think that they do have the talent. Just a matter of things coming together. Most of all, staying healthy. And obviously, we talked about, speaking of staying healthy, Tyrone Tracy staying healthy. One who's not healthy, J.J. McCarthy, Anthony, I don't know if you saw that. He's out for the season. Damn. Torn meniscus. Totally repaired. He's done for the year. Sam Darnold, here we come, week 1. Sucks for J.J. McCarthy. Looked really good in the preseason game, but man, the Giants have to now prepare for Sam Darnold. Now they know who's going to be starting quarterback there. So Sam Darnold is not a really good player. He's kind of bad. And they're going to be trying to survive with that. I'm sure Justin Jefferson is very upset, because obviously the goal here is to transition for them to McCarthy full time as that starting quarterback. But, thoughts on just health in general. Also, week 1 matchup now, Sam Darnold is the starter there.
Yeah, the Giants defense obviously needs to stay healthy. Like Thibodeau needs to be healthy, Burns, Dexter Lawrence. None of those guys have really ever suffered significant injuries through their career so far, knock on wood. So feeling good about their chances of remaining healthy, but it is obviously of vital importance for the team and for every team. It really sucks to see J.J. McCarthy go down with this injury. I understand some Giants fans are going to say, well, now we have an easier matchup potentially in week 1. Sure, but I don't want to see a young 21-year-old rookie with a lot of talent potential lose his rookie season. That sucks, man. So sucks for McCarthy. Giants defensive line has an opportunity now. They're going to be going up against a quarterback in week 1 who really struggles under pressure. Maybe Thibodeau, Burns, and Dexter Lawrence have a field day at MetLife Stadium on week 1 and just get after Sam Darnold and force him to throw some interceptions. And maybe the Giants pull off an upset win in week 1, and maybe we get the season started on the right note. Could be a possibility now with this really good defensive line going against a quarterback who just doesn't play well under pressure. So I'm really excited for that. And I want to make the point on Thibodeau. He's 23, man. He's so young. He was just named to the CBS Sports All Under 25 team. Young, rising, ascending player like so many of the players on this Giants team. Like Malik Neighbors, I want to flip over there and just talk about how BetUS has some really awesome odds on his receiving yards for this upcoming season. So I kind of want to just take a quick break and dive into that and share those odds with you guys right now. So just wanted to jump in here and show you guys the odds here on BetUS for wide receivers to reach over 1,000 receiving yards this season. If you'll take a look, obviously Tyreek Hill, dominant season last year. If he didn't get hurt, probably goes for over 2,000 receiving yards. You keep scrolling all the way down, and there's Malik Neighbors at plus 160. And guys, I love the value on this bet. Plus 160, you're making positive money there for sure. Quite a lot of it if he hits that 1,000 yards receiving mark, and he should. He's the Giants' number 1 wide receiver. If he doesn't get the 1,000 receiving yards, who will? The Giants haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since 2018 when Odell Beckham Jr. left, but Malik Neighbors should quickly end that drought. I mean, come on, guys. He's the all-time leading receiver at LSU's college football program. He's the focal point of this offense. We've seen what he's done throughout training camp. If you see this bet, you know this is a really good deal on those odds at plus 160. Puts him ahead of a lot of other great players who have gone for 1,000 receiving yards in the past. Really good deal here. And don't forget, guys, if you use our promo code to sign up down below, you'll get a massive 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. There's live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety, and hey, they do offer 10% back on your net losses twice a year, and you'll get 24/7 personalized service 365 days a year. And with BetUS, you can have your very own account manager. So if you're ready to start, check out our special BetUS link in the description below to go ahead and get started. All right, now returning in from the discussion on those Malik Neighbors odds, which were pretty awesome, want to talk about the rest of this defensive line, Alex. We've done plenty here, praising KT, praising Burns, praising Dexter Lawrence. Let's talk about the holes on this team, right, on the defensive line. Who is starting next to Dexter Lawrence on the interior is my big question mark. Obviously, Raheem Nunez-Roches, Nacho, he's probably going to be the starter. How comfortable are we with that? Do we think a guy like Elijah Chapman, undrafted free agent who had a sack in the first preseason game, looked pretty good? Could he end up becoming the starter? What are your thoughts here as we kind of take a look at this defensive line and discuss how it's great, a lot of potential, but also some reason for concern?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the concern here is marginal, right? You're talking about DT2. Like, what teams have elite DT2s? Not many. You're looking for competency most time. I think, obviously, was Robinson last year A'Shawn Robinson was really solid for us. Obviously went on to get a little bit more money in free agency, but Raheem Nunez-Roches is a solid player. He is a Super Bowl winning player, with the Bucks. So I don't really sit here and look at the situation and say like there's a big weakness. I think that in fact, we're pretty solid at DT2 if you think about the talent that we have. And Andre Patterson, trust him to get the most out of these young guys like DJ Davidson and Jordan Riley. We saw flashes of competency as a pass rusher from Davidson. Jordan Riley looks solid in run support. And then, another guy I didn't even mention, Elijah Chapman. He's been running with the ones too. He looked excellent in the preseason game. So Chapman, I think somebody recently said, I forget who it was, that he's the strongest player on the entire team. Someone said Elijah Chapman is the strongest player on the whole team. That's kind of what you want as an interior defender. If you're a DT2 and you are the strongest person on the team and you're moving bodies and you're able to shift the line of scrimmage and move in the run game forward and create openings for your linebackers, that's exactly what your job is, right? Your job is to open up lanes, force running backs into specific areas, and then your linebackers clean it up. So Chapman's been working in, getting some really good snaps. He's getting a lot of high praise from a lot of the coaches. Andre Patterson, once again, doing tremendous work with some of these young guys. Late round draft picks, by the way, with projectable tools. So, I don't see DT2 as necessarily an issue. I see it more as like let's see who steps up. Let's see what young guy becomes that ultimate starter long term. Raheem Nunez-Roches, good veteran. He'll be the starter probably on day one, but guys stepping in, young pieces here, young developmental pieces that have been working for the last couple seasons. I'm excited about it, man. This is you can't have stars at every single spot. You need some of these projects to develop. I think Andre Patterson's done a great job getting them into a spot where they can fill in and they can do a pretty solid job when they're called upon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think Andre Patterson is kind of one of those talents on a coaching staff that you bank on to make players better. He's done that so many times. And with this defensive line, like I said, there is kind of a hole here at DT2. It's a big one. It's one that they haven't really filled since they let Leonard Williams go. Obviously, I praise that trade. Love that trade. They pretty much traded away Leonard Williams in his 30s. Same draft capital and package for Brian Burns at like 26 or 27, however old he is. He's pretty young. So I don't know. I think that it's one of those holes that the Giants probably need to try and patch up, but it's not the end-all be-all of a defensive line. When you've got so much talent across the board at the Dexter Lawrence defensive tackle spot and Burns and Thibodeau on the edge and the depth behind those guys, I like Ojulari as a backup. I really like Boogie Basham and what he's shown in the preseason so far. I don't think there's a ton to be concerned about. And actually, Alex, here's one creative idea that I'm just going to throw out there before we kind of wrap this thing up. Talking about that edge depth, there are some decent players. Like, I think Ojulari is a good football player. I just think he played too much and his body couldn't hold up, so he had some injuries. But playing less, I think he's going to be even more productive in the small amount of time that he's on the field, which makes him a really good third down pass rusher. Pretty much an essential position for most NFL teams. But Boogie Basham actually has the ability to not only play on the edge, but on the interior as well. I think that we could see him play a lot of that DT2 spot, Alex. Boogie Basham is a big dude. Like, he is kind of that Jihad Ward archetype that the Giants had last year, but a little bit more explosive and obviously way younger. Former second-round pick, versatile player. I think we see him play on the interior defensive line quite a lot in pass rushing situations rather than having like a big Jordan Riley go out there on a third and long. That doesn't make a ton of sense for you. Take Boogie Basham, who's an inside-outside pass rusher, put him down on the interior and let him get after the quarterback. I really like that idea. I think that kind of highlights, first of all, the depth that the Giants have in the edge room, maybe not being as bad as we initially thought, and also the fact that they can get creative on that second DT2 spot, especially on those pass rushing downs. So what are your thoughts on that and just kind of the edge depth in general here for the Giants?
I mean, the edge depth, you got Azeez Ojulari and Boogie Basham. I think Azeez Ojulari obviously has had a kind of troubled career at this point due to the injury concerns, but at the end of the day, he's a solid pass rusher. He's a good player when he's available. He makes an impact. Having him as your like outside linebacker 3 is a luxury, and I think that most people should acknowledge that. You know what I mean? Like, who has really great backups? Not many teams. The Giants finally, for the first time, have competent depth at outside linebacker, right? Azeez Ojulari was starting last year, let alone the last 3 years. Now he's a backup. Boogie Basham, experienced guy. He's a backup. This is a very good situation for the Giants. Behind them, obviously the fall off is steep, but most teams don't have 4th and 5th options at outside linebacker that are competent. The Giants have a guy in Azeez Ojulari that, by the way, might be a key trade candidate at midseason, depending on how the Giants are. He's a guy that could step into a team and start immediately. Having him as a rotational piece and to keep guys healthy and whatnot, a pure pass rusher who just a few years ago had 6 sacks and like 300 snaps. This is a solid player that I think offers you, when healthy, good production and good impact. Like, you can't just forget about him. If you're an opposing team, he comes in, you gotta be watching him as a pass rusher, because you can't forget about a guy like that. He'll bite you when if you're not looking. So I do think that if you're the Giants, the depth now a lot better than it used to be. This defensive line, like I said, has top 5 potential. They just have to get there. They just have to play to their potential, and they're going to be a very dangerous unit. The secondary is a whole different conversation. We'll talk about that another day. They look like they need help. So, hopefully somebody emerges there, but the depth there, not pretty. Not pretty at all. They need some experience. They have no veteran leadership there, no veteran experience. That is a bit problematic in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that we could probably do a breakdown on the secondary tomorrow and kind of dive into that and some of the pitfalls potentially of that unit. Really young unit, though, and a lot of potential there, and I feel similarly about this defensive line. It's young, it's got potential, and there's some really exciting players. Sure, there might be some room for improvement, but the top-end talent on this unit is enough to get you excited and hoping that in week 1, Sam Darnold gets dropped 6 times and throws 3 picks. So that's what we're hoping for. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really excited for this Giants defensive line and to continue to cover the Giants and discuss all of the different news, rumors, and speculation and reports right here on Fireside Giants. So Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.